This video is brought to you by my patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your generous support in funding this channel and keeping it up and running. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video here on my channel, and instead of adding something to one of my series of videos, I've got another special video for you today. So I asked on a couple of different Facebook groups, and I'm sure I've asked this on Twitter many times before, what are the top 10 mana rocks for Commander? And looking through a lot of the answers, you can see a lot of the classic answers here, and even EDHREC would probably agree with the majority of these answers here. Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Grim Monolith, Mana Vault, Signets, Talismans, Chromatic Lantern, Fellwar Stone, etc. We can see there's a lot of different answers to this question, and again, this is not just the one Facebook group. I asked again to 5 other Facebook groups in addition to this. So if I look down here, you'll see a bunch of different people answering as well. Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Arcane Signet, Thought Vessel, Mind Stone, Fellwar Stone, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Mox Opal, Lotus Petal, Chromatic Lantern. Here, someone put all the Signets and Talismans. So there's a lot of different answers here that you can find, and a lot of people will probably agree with these. However, I'm going to be doing something today that might be showing you that the math might be in disagreement with the majority of these players. I mean, this player right here put Wayfarer's Bauble, and while that's not something that most people consider a mana rock, I'm actually going to be including it here for my math as well, just to kind of compare it, because a lot of times people say, oh, it's basically just as good as a Manolith. Why would I run, Wayfarer's Bauble? It's so expensive. There's no reason to actually go for it that way. So we're going to be looking through this. Again, I'm looking through this for other answers, Lion's Eye Diamond. A lot of people answering in the similar, same way. But hopefully what I will present to you will change your mind. So I went ahead and I looked at, Basalt Monolith, Chrome Mox, Commander's Sphere, Dreamstone Hedron, Empowered Auto Generator, Firemind Vessel, Gilded Lotus, Grim Monolith, Hedron Archive, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Mind Stone, Paradise Plume, Pyramid of the Pantheon, Pyromancer's Goggles, Soul Ring, Star Compass, Thran Dynamo, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Warren Power Stone. That's 20 of those as options. So obviously I'm not adding all of them. You might be wondering, okay, why am I not looking at Talismans or Signets? It's actually pretty simple. We've got Mind Stone here on the list, and because all of those, Mind Stone, the Signets, and the Talismans, come down for 2 mana, and they can produce 1 mana right away, it's just going to be pretty good to consolidate it all into one row here, or one column rather. So we're going to be looking at it that way. If you see Mind Stone, that's just as good as the Signets. I don't have here Sisay's Ring or Urgolem Zai. That's going to be represented here by Hedron Archive. I don't have Manolith, Darksteel Ingot, stuff like that. That's all going to be represented by Commander Sphere. So you get the idea. We're not looking at each individual rock. We're taking one mana rock that can be a good representative for each of the various categories, and I hope I didn't miss anything here, but this is what a lot of people mention. Now you'll notice Lotus Petal and cards like that not going to be on here because they have an effect and then they go away, so that's certainly not going to be something you can consider a rock. However, I did include stuff like Basalt Monolith and Grim Monolith because I think studying these two can explain why you want to have a very specific definition of mana rock, an artifact that can come down and produce mana for you each turn for the rest of the game. That's kind of the idea here with these rocks. So I made this chart here. We're looking at the turns 1 through 10, and then how much mana it can produce up to that point. So for example here, if I look at Commander Sphere as an example, turn 1, it doesn't produce anything, so we can't cast it yet. Turn 2, same thing, can't cast it yet. Turn 3, we can finally cast it for 3 mana, so that brings us down to -3, and then we can produce 1 mana from it, so that brings our net total amount of mana produced to -2. Next turn we can produce 1, so we can go up to -1. Again, producing another 1, we're finally at even. We break even with this card. We've produced as much mana as we've used to cast it by turn 5. Turn 6, we finally produced 1 mana, 7 mana, turn 7, 2 mana, 3 mana on turn 8, 4 mana on turn 9, and 5 mana on turn 10. So you get the idea of how this works. We're looking at, you've got the card in hand, you cast it, and then you're producing mana from it each turn that you can, and how much mana can that produce. So here is the chart that we've got, and it is a very, very intense chart, so I'm going to go ahead and explain what's going on here. There's a lot of things happening, so we're going to go ahead and jump into it. We've got those 20 rocks, and I've done them different colors, different shapes, different sizes to try to make this chart as easy to see and easy to read with the overlapping points and the lines. Trying to make it as readable as possible, but I think it's going to be very helpful for me to go through it. Now, you'll notice some of these lines don't overlap almost with anything. And this top line right here, it looks like more like kind of like a greenish cyan star. That one corresponds here to Mana Crypt. So it comes down on turn 1. It immediately produces 2 mana, and then every turn after that, it produces an additional 2 mana, never having to actually pay mana for the card. You'll notice here that right next to the Mana Crypt, you'll see a parentheses, and you'll see a number in that parentheses, 0. This is referring to how many turns it takes after it comes down before you actually start producing a positive amount of mana. So Mana Crypt, it comes down and immediately produces enough mana. So unlike, for example, here, Gilded Lotus, where it would come down, it's a 5-drop. It comes down, produces 3 mana. The turn it comes down, it doesn't produce enough mana to pay for itself. But the very next turn, it does. So that's going to be a 1-turn wait for you to be able to go ahead and get to a positive amount. Mana Vault, it's immediate. It goes up to 0 immediately. There are certain cards here, like Basalt Monolith, that they don't actually pay for themselves. No matter what, because Basalt Monolith will come down, it can produce 3 mana, it costs 3 mana, but it can't untap unless you have some other way to untap it, so it never actually gets to that point. Whereas Chromonics, I put the not applicable here because you're having to use up an additional card from your hand, you're having to exile it, and Chromonics will never get you that card back. So in a way, you're never getting a positive amount of resources that you dump into that card. So that's kind of the idea here. So this top card right here is Mana Crypt. What is this line right below it? It's a purple circle. That is Sol Ring. So you'll notice here that's also 0. If we look at the next one below it, and it depends on where on the chart you look, and I'll get into that in a second. If you look at the next one, the next one that kind of seems to be right there as close as possible to them is this red line. This red line here is referring to Chrome Mox. Again, I mentioned how this when you have a rock that requires you to lose a card from hand, that's going to be some amount of disadvantage for you when you don't have a way to draw those cards back. Most likely you'll have ways to draw those cards, but is it worth using up 2 cards to get to this red line? My opinion, probably not, but we'll see as we go on to this if that solution or if that answer becomes a little bit more clear. Alright, so we've got all 20 rocks here, and the reason I've done it here by turn number is because it really, in order to answer this question best, you've got to figure out what turn you're ending the game at. And if you like this type of analysis and you want to look into this stuff, you're definitely going to be wanting to join me for my stream that I'll be having tomorrow, where I'm going to go through a bunch of questions people have asked me, and I'll be answering them kind of in an AMA style as a celebration of hitting 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, my personal birthday, hey, I'm turning 27, and then also the birthday of the channel. It's finally 2 years old. So that'll be tomorrow at twitch.tv/magical_hacker. So be sure to join me there. You can find the link to that in the comment below. And I'll be going through this question. I'll be going through a lot of different questions. But I think the best way to answer what are the best mana rocks for Commander, you have to look at when the game is ending. If you're going to be ending here on turn 10, you can definitely see the lines that are going to turn 10 are very different than if you're ending on turn 4, for example. So on turn 4, let's start off with this one. We've got all 20 rocks here. The number one best rock for a turn 4 ended game is going to be Mana Crypt. Next is going to be Sol Ring. Here we've got this triangle, Chromox. Again, you're using up 2 cards, but for some people that will definitely be worth it for the third best way to produce mana. After that, here we've got the Cyan Circle, which is Mana Vault, also another well-known card. We've got here after that, we've got the green triangle, which is Grim Monolith. The green square, blue triangle, which is Mindstone. So those are the Signets and the Talismans. You can see them right there. Number 5 on the list. And in this one, what we've got here is we've got a couple of lines you can see that are going down. That tends to mean that this is being cast here on the next turn. So the last thing that's actually in this spot is Star Compass. So if you don't know what Star Compass is, it's kind of like a Signet, except it enters tapped. So this is any 2 mana rock that obviously costs 2 mana, comes down, produces 1 mana, but comes into play tapped. So when you look at this, obviously after this point you're not really getting any positive amount because that's at 0. So that's why a lot of these mana rocks were mentioned here in most of those threads. We've got, like I said, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Chrome Mox. We have the Mana Vault, we've got the Mind Stone, the Signets, the Talismans, Grim Monolith, Basalt Monolith, and Star Compass wasn't mentioned too often, but that's obviously of the worst of those. So that's where you get a lot of those people talking about why they thought those cards were the best. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Obviously, if you're looking at ending the game on turn 4, then those rocks will be the best. However, games in Commander, maybe in CEDH they end on turn 4, but in regular Commander, they do not end on turn 4. They usually end between turn 8, turn 10, sometimes up to like turn 15-ish, but usually not much farther than that. And really, the point where you've gotten to 10, I mean, that's pretty much as good as you'll get for most of these mana rocks. So I want to look now at here, we can look at turn 4, but I want to look here at turn 8 and turn 10. Looking at these 2 turns might give us a clue as to what's actually better in Commander according to the math. Now, one thing to recognize is you see this this line here that's yellow. That's the Empowered Auto Generator. It's all the way up here, number 4 on turn 10. The downside here, though, is it costs 3 turns to pay for itself. We do see that as the same amount of mana here to pay for the Commander Sphere, but we'll find a bunch of cards that will be even worse. So we can see here Pyramid of the Pantheon, Pyromancer's Goggles, and Wayfarer's Bauble here, surprisingly taking 4 turns to pay for itself. That's partly because you can get it down earlier. If you wanted to play it down as a Commander Sphere, you're going to be able to get it down at the same time. However, Commander Sphere will go ahead and immediately pay 1 mana, whereas the Wayfarer's Bauble, you have to wait 1 mana before you can use that land. It comes into play untapped. So really, we've got Wayfarer's Bauble, Pyromancer's Goggles, Pyramid of the Pantheon, and Paradise Plume. These take so much time to pay for themselves. Doesn't matter where they show up on the list, you might as well not even include them. If you top deck one of them, you'll have to wait 4 turns before you actually get mana produced from them as a result of casting them. So you really don't want to be waiting that much time. Even 3 turns might be considered too much. It's kind of like borderline there. Once you get down to the 2s and the 1s, and obviously the 0s, you'll be a lot happier. But I think 3s, kind of borderline. If you really need to have them, then go ahead and go for them. But the 2s and the 1s and the 0s, those are going to be much better. So let's go ahead and take a look here at turn 8. If you're going to have a pretty short game of Commander, this is, I think, going to be where you want to look. If you're going to having more of a long game, you're going to be looking at turn 10. So for example here, we started at turn 10. Let's keep going. We have the Mana Crypt here at number 1, still there. And there might be even an argument to be made that it's in the same category as Chrome Mox. It will never actually pay for itself because you're having to pay life in order to keep it around as well. It's not guaranteed that you'll be losing life, but the probability of it is so high that you'll be losing at least 3 life over the course of the game that it's basically, again, not going to be able to pay for itself. So Mana Crypt here, number 1 slot-ish. It doesn't actually pay for itself. Soul Ring definitely going to be paying for itself, and is in the 2nd slot. After that, we've got the Thran Dynamo, which is number 3, and the aforementioned Empowered Auto Generator. Now, the issue again with the Empowered Auto Generator, takes 3 turns for it to pay for itself. But the Thran Dynamo, if we take a look at that one, Thran Dynamo here only takes 1 turn to pay for itself. We can pay for 4 mana, get it down, produces 3 mana right away, and then the next turn produces an additional 3 mana. We're already in the positive zone. So that kind of shows you here that that Thran Dynamo is actually pretty good. And one of the reasons why it might be considered that is because it produces more mana than a Soul Ring. So already it can eventually outpace the Soul Ring, but it's also the cheapest option that does that. It only costs 4 mana. So that's why we see it higher here than the blue line, than the green line, which are all parallel, meaning they all produce the same amount of mana, so they have the same slope. So that's going to be the slope of producing 3 mana. We can see here 2 others as well. So pretty interesting stuff here so far. We've got Thran Dynamo next. The one after this one is the Pyramid of the Pantheon. Now you'll notice here It's pretty crazy how much mana it will produce on turn 10. But if we follow all the way from the beginning, we see that it costs 1 mana. We have to pay an additional mana on the next turn to get the first brick counter. Technically, we're paying 2, but we get 1 mana back, so that's a -1 usage here. So we pay an additional mana, then we pay an additional mana, then we pay an additional mana. Suddenly, it's going to be as good as a Gilded Lotus, but we've paid already 4 mana for it. So here on the next turn, we can see the Pyromancer's Goggles dipping down as much. But if we look at the Gilded Lotus, which is the green triangle, we will see that the green triangle here goes all the way down to, I believe, let me see here, the Gilded Lotus on turn 5. Turn 5, Gilded Lotus will be up to -2, so we should be seeing it right here. So it's going to be on this line right here. So on turn 4, we've got the Pyramid of the Pantheon. We can see the Gilded Lotus drops 1 mana lower than it and follows it all the way up. So that's going to be this card right here. It's going to be the Gilded Lotus. We see that those two are close together because the Pyramid of the Pantheon takes at least like 4 turns to pay for itself. I put here 5 because we're playing it on turn 1, but really you could be playing it on turn 3 and then producing 1 mana from it. But that's not going to give it a better curve than this one. This one's going to be the best curve possible. And so it's really costing a lot of turns to pay for it. So we might even just, not include the Empowered Auto Generator and the Pyramid of the Pantheon. So 1, 2, 3, the Thran Dynamo. 4 is going to be Gilded Lotus here. Again, producing 3 mana, only costing 1 more mana than the Thran Dynamo. Puts it a little bit lower, obviously, but it's not going to be too much of a difference. Next, after that one, we've got the Worn Power Stone. Then after that, we've got here the Hedron Archive, the red triangle, which is the Chromox again. We've got another one. Actually, it's just those 2. We've got Hedron Archive and the Chromox. So you can see here, if your game is ending on turn 10, Hedron Archive, Sisay's Ring, Urgolem's Eye, those are all going to be equally efficient as a Chromox. If you get to turn 10, they're going to be, 1 card producing enough mana to produce a total amount of 10 mana by turn 10, including their cost. So you can see them being very helpful there. Next one after that, we've got the Dreamstone Hedron, which is surprisingly still higher right now than the Signets. Then after that, we've got the Firemine Vessel. This is a 4 mana rock that enters tapped. It does take 3 turns to pay for itself, though, so that makes it also pretty bad as well. Then we've got the Mind Stone. So Mind Stone here, this is where all the Signets are. So you can see here, Signets, not bad, but we've got the Hedron Archive, Sisay's Ring, Urgolem's Eye. Those are still better than them on turn 10. Is that the case, though, on turn 8? So if we follow this down, we'll see here we've got the Hedron Archive following the Signets. Looks like it is still better than them on turn 8. The only time that they are equally effective is on turn 7, and the only time that the Signets are better than Hedron Archive are on turn 6 or earlier. So if your games last fewer than 7 turns, you're going to be wanting to play Signets. However, if they last more than 6 turns, or more than 7 turns rather, then you're going to be wanting to have Hedron Archive, Sisay's Ring, Urgolem's Eye. And I think most people can agree with me that the majority of Commander games will be going on more than 7 turns. If you're going at 7 turns on average, then they're equally as viable. Those are pretty good. Looking at here the 8th turn, which I think is going to be more reasonable. I think turn 10, it's more of a longer game of Commander. I think turn 8 might be somewhere closer to the average. You've got here Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Thran Dynamo. Here in the next one, we've got that Pyramid of the Pantheon and the Chromox overlapped. Here in this one, we've got Worn Power Stone and Gilded Lotus overlapped. Then we've got the Hedron Archive. Then we've got the Signets. We also over here had the Empowered Auto Generator, the same turn as the Worn Power Stone and all those other cards. But again, having to pay 3 turns, having to wait 3 turns to pay for itself, not going to be as great. After that, we've got here the Star Compass and the Firemine Vessel. So again, if you're ending at turn 8, you really don't want to be using any of those tapped mana rocks, except for maybe the Worn Power Stone. The Worn Power Stone here seems very good. But the other 2, Star Compass and Firemine Vessel, not so great. And then after that, there's plenty of other cards here. So if we were going to be looking at turn 8, which I think is a pretty reasonable average for the end of Commander games, and that's just based on my feelings. If I were to use the math, I actually have another list for the math of when games end. It's actually around turn 11. So, discounting that, kind of going more for a more, I guess, based on feelings. Like, I feel like it is more around turn 8. We actually will see this here. So based on looking at it by turn 8, number 1 is going to be Mana Crypt, number 2 is going to be Soul Ring, number 3 is going to be Thran Dynamo, number 4 is going to be Chromox. I think is better than the Pyramid of the Pantheon. We might actually get rid of both of these cards, but if you want to include them, I mean, that's certainly going to be up to you. I'm not going to be including the Pyramid of the Pantheon. Again, it takes way too many turns to pay for itself. So number 4 here is going to be Chromox if you're okay losing card advantage for the Mana Rock. So that's number 4. Number 5 is going to be Gilded Lotus and Worn Power Stone tied for 5 and 6. Number 7 is going to be Hedron Archive, Sisay's Ring, Urgolem's Eye. Those are all going to be tied for 7, 8, and 9. And then number 10 here is going to be the Signet. So eventually you do get down to them. I think I did this math right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so eventually number 10, you might include 1 Mind Stone. But there's plenty of other options as well. So you see here quite a number of cards here. I'm not including some of the obvious inclusions like Smothering Tithe, which is so good you just want to include it pretty much in every white deck. So yeah, there's a lot of cards here. Looking at turn 8, once you get down to the 10th option, then you find a card that you're actually going to be interested in playing as a Signet. Above that, there's plenty of other options that are pretty good. So I hope that looking into the math here has helped you decide what Mana Rocks to be playing in your decks. I've always been interested in playing in like Hedron Archive style effects over Signets. Seeing them better though than stuff like the Firemind Vessel might kind of push me into not playing the Firemind Vessel quite as often compared to the Signets. Definitely the Wayfarer's Bauble here and other cards, Dreamstone Hedron, Mana Vault, Paradise Plume, these are all not going to be as great, so there's no reason to really be playing those. But yeah, I hope this has helped you decide what Mana Rocks that you can have. And to all those people that answered my question on Facebook, hopefully this will show you where you're right and where you're wrong according to the math. So thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope that this has helped you out, and I'll definitely be posting this to my Twitter for those of you that are following me at twitter.com/magical__hacker. But I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope you had a lot of fun watching it, and I will see you next time. Stay awesome, everybody.